Hey guys, what is up? Kitty here, Burn with the Shadowverse Evolved channel, coming back at you with another deck profile. You guys voted on this one. You guys wanted to see a hunter list, so here we are. I'm going to break down the hunter list. Been testing against this a lot recently, and the deck is very consistent. It doesn't have a very high ceiling, but it generally does the same game plan every game, and it does it very well. Let's get right into the deck profile so I can explain it to you. All right, so here's the deck list itself. We'll just kind of jump right into it so I can kind of explain things as we go along. First thing here is Crossbow Sniper here. It's a 1-drop on 1. You can discard a hunter card to select the enemy leader, enemy follower on the field, and deal 1 damage to it, and then draw a card. This actually adds a lot of consistency to the deck because every single card we play in this list is a hunter card, which means we'll always have targets to be able to discard, and we'll always be able to draw cards, as well as deal damage to our opponent. A lot of times this comes down on 1. It'll swing in for 1, deal 1, so it'll get in for 2 damage usually pretty quickly, and then usually it falls off from there. But the big thing that this card adds to the deck is not only like the extra little pokes of damage, but the consistency from being able to draw a card every time you draw one of these and play one of these. That's like one of the big parts, because some of our followers do have a condition of having 3 or more hunters in our grave, so we kind of want to get there as soon as possible. So if you open up Crossbow Sniper, it's probably the best 1-drop to be opening up, followed by Servant of Unkilling. This is a 1-drop goblin, and then once we get the 300s in the cemetery, we get a heal 2 every time we play one of our goblins, which is nice. Gives us a little bit of extra cushion while still being like reasonably statted for a 1-drop. Mark of the Six, surprisingly, can be like a blowout occasionally when like you're playing against Kuon or something and they think that one of their last attacks is going to go through for exact lethal. Mark of the Six comes in clutch sometimes. There have been some games where for example, I played against Prussia and he played 2 Marks of the Six against me when I was playing Kuon, and I was like, well, I can't get through that. GG. Card is wacky and crazy too. I only play it as a 2 of in this list because I'm not always really impressed with this card, and I think it's always one of the first cards I'm willing to discard to with Crossbow Sniper, especially early on if I draw into it. But it's nice to always threaten the fact that you do run this card, and like anytime you leave up 1 play point, your opponent gonna kind of have to think a little bit more about how they want to play out their turn if they need to play a certain way to get around Mark of the Six for lethal. 3 of Archer. This is kind of one of our only really good ways to interact with the board. It's one of our top choices to search out too off of our 3-drop Evo, which is really great. And then every turn this lives, we just get us poke down our opponent's board a little bit more and more and give us a little bit more control while also being able to push damage. The deck does a very good job at building wide boards over and over again once we start getting to the mid to late game, especially. So it's nice when Archer comes down mid game to late game and then suddenly you're getting like 3 to 4 pings a turn, not including the fact that we do play Mark of the Unkilling in this list, so we can, you know, get rid of big followers at the cost of like 2 play points plus like 1 other follower we're going to play on the board anyway. We do only play 1 of the Evo. It doesn't come up that often you need the Evo, but having 1 of it is very nice, especially into the other force matchups or even the mirror match, honestly. Disciple of Unkilling, another very huge consistency card. Every card in this deck is a hunter card, so this will always draw you a card. So this basically is a 2-drop 1/3 draw card, which is very nice for the deck. It having 3 health too is quite annoying, and 1 attack. So a lot of times, like if you make a wide board and this is the follower on the board, you can kind of, you know, almost guarantee this card's going to live unless they have a specific board wipe in mind to remove your entire board, because 1 damage over the course of like 1 or 2 turns doesn't really hurt that much, or they might not think it hurts that much, but over time the extra 1 damage here and there adds up to a lot of extra damage. I remember in some of the games where it's like I didn't want to waste removal or run anything into this, I'd rather go for the face damage. Disciple of Unkilling ended up getting like 3 to 4 hits in before I actually removed it, or they had to run it into one of my wards. So you actually get a lot of value surprisingly out of this card just because it has 3 health. All right, this is fake Latham pretty much. Greenwood Guardian. It's the payoff for playing Hunter. You get to have a 2-drop 3/3 once you have 3 or more cards in your cemetery that are Hunter traded. And this card also buries a card on play, meaning you move the top card of your deck to your cemetery, which means that it'll quickly help add up into your cemetery to just, you know, get to that 300 cards. So once you have 2 in there already, you play this down and it'll generate the 3rd one for you, and then this will be a 3/3 for the remainder of the game with Ward. It's just, you know, it's just a good stated card. It's a hunter card too, so we're almost forced to play it because it's just a good card. Like, what can I say? It has the right trait. It's overstated and gets like a benefit from playing hunter. Woodland Cleaver, 3 of here. Card is amazingly good. It helps, you know, with that lethal line in the late game. You can pull this out with like Ligma or something. Otherwise, early game, it does act as kind of our board control removal. It's statted very well too, because if you go second, you play this on 2, evo it, you get to deal 2 damage to a follower on the field, which is nice. And then you have a 3/3 to run into something else. It's one of the best ways for us to answer Pixie Dragon with only 1 card in an evo. So a lot of times you can just set up like, if they choose to ward it on 2 and we're going second, we just play Woodland Cleaver, evo, hit it for 2, then swing it for 3 to remove it completely. And we only necessarily trade 1 card and the evo. It kind of sucks sometimes trading the evo, but this is kind of one of our big answers for the card because Pixie Dragon is quite annoying. Other than that, it, you know, extends some of our lethal range in the later turns of the game, which is very, very nice. I chose to play 2 Mark of the Unkilling. Sometimes there are followers on the board that just get too massive, and Assault Jaguar sometimes it just is not the best option to remove those cards. But what's nice about Mark of the Unkilling is it, unfortunately, the whole meme of unkilling, you leave them with 1 health, but this card replaces itself not only, you know, extend some of your removal with Archer, so you can use this with Archer, draw a card, then play like a 1-drop or something to remove the card suddenly, which is very, very nice. But the added bonus of drawing a card, creating more consistency for the deck, feels pretty good. I kind of enjoyed this card a little bit. I have it as a 3F because a lot of times too, you can just easily discard it to Crossbow Sniper, and you're totally fine with it because you run 3 of it. But outside of that, it just still there for the consistency tool. Sometimes you play like in Abyss or something, you get rid of like their turn 6 Israfil or something like that if you still have the hand size to deal with it. Luckily, you know, Hunter for the most part does a decently good job of, you know, keeping hand size up because there's a lot of card generation in this deck actually. Abby the Axe Girl is kind of here for like weird high roll plays. It's just another Hunter card that's actually statted very well. It's a 3/4 for 3, but then once it starts being able to attack, it'll gain an extra attack, and if it ever gets to 5 attack, it'll do 2 damage every time it swings to the leader, which is nice from its strike effect. Card, like every time I see this card on the board, it doesn't really do much, but it does create like this big lightning rod of like this card needs to be removed before it starts like popping off on getting extra swings in to get to that 5 attack damage, which is kind of scary sometimes. Apostle of Unkilling is another huge consistency card. I think it's one of the, I would say one of the great reasons to be running Hunter in general. A lot of times you will be evoing it. I play 3 of the evo because every time I see this card, I just want to evo it to get another card onto the board, usually the draw card or Archer. Those are like the 2 major cards I like grabbing off of this. And sometimes you also get Greenwood Guardian for the 3/3 ward in those cases, or even if you need lethal, Woodland Cleaver can come out and swing in for the Storm 2 damage and so forth. But yeah, we play 3 of the evo because a lot of times, like I said, we want Archer, we want a Disciple of Unkilling, Greenwood Guardian, Woodland Cleaver, getting Storm as well. All huge plays to be getting, and even sometimes you just go and get the heal too because you're using the 2 extra health, which is nice. Like the card a lot. I think it's one of the best reasons to be playing Hunter because it adds so much consistency while also building a board for you that your opponent has to deal with as well. Assault Jaguar, this is kind of our body removal tool, but that also surprisingly replaces itself. So it's a 3-drop 4/1 rush that can generally remove most things once they become sideways essentially. But it has last words. Look at the top 2 cards of your deck. You may reveal a Hunter card from among them and add it to your hand, then bury the rest. So put the other card into the grave. Once again, this acts as a 3-drop removal spell on top of also replacing itself and giving you some flexibility on what card you're going to be drawing into. So there are plays where you'll run this in to hopefully top deck like Izuda or something to answer something else, which is nice. Card surprisingly does very, very well. It does get hit by, like, if you play against Cool and stuff, it having one life is kind of like a liability sometimes, but the fact that you still have the last word is very, very nice because you, like I said, it's going to replace itself unless this card gets banished. Wildwood Matriarch. This is probably the best worst card in the list by a lot. I feel like this card, every time you draw it, you just like, you hate this card. It's like a necessary evil because it combos so well with your Ligma or whatever. So you have to like play this card as a 3-of, and even though like you feel like you don't want to. We play 2 of the Evo because generally we're only going to Evo it about twice a game. If it goes any longer than that, it's going to be pretty insane. But on Evo, you select up to 200 followers that cost 2 or less in your cemetery and summon them to the board. This is how you get extra storm damage off of your Ligma turns. Basically, this card is like how we're going to finish out games a lot of the times. You're hoping to hit the Matriarch to go ahead, summon the Matriarch, use an Evo point to Evo the Matriarch to go into our Woodland Cleavers to go ahead and summon out 4 more storm damage and just push face damage that way. Otherwise, it still builds a relatively wide board once it Evos, which is nice on turns 5 and 6 for you. So you can still add a lot of pressure to your opponent when you are forced to like kind of curve out with this card. But like I said, this is like a necessary evil in the deck. I don't like this card, but it kind of works well with the game plan. It is a hunter card and works very well with our Ligma turns as well when needed. If there was a way I could cut this card and play something better, I would, but unfortunately I didn't come up with anything else. Izudia, this card is our best removal option in the game, or in this deck even, is because we're going to have the 300 cards by turn 5 in our cemetery, at which point we get to start not only locking essentially parts of our opponent's board up by turning things into amulets, but they now have to pay 2 pay points if they need that space on the board to, you know, keep going and so forth. And it also doubly acts as extension for our finishing turn. So if our opponent leaves a board up and they don't expect 6 storm damage, essentially, you can push a lot of damage if they are not very careful. And like you Izuda, Evo, hit them for 6, putting them under 10 now with that 6 damage, and then you can just push in with the rest of your followers that they did not remove that turn for game. Essentially, it's quite annoying having to play around this card too, because if you heal back up to 10, suddenly Izudia is back online and they can just hit you for 6 and swing in for 4 with something else, and the game's kind of over from there, which is kind of scary. I play this only as a 1-of. You could play this as a 2-of though if you feel like you need it, but I feel like a lot of games you only need to ever play this as a 1-of. That's why I went with the triple Apostle of Unkilling, because I like the consistency that card adds more than anything else. And Izudia is just kind of there when you know you're ready to pop off. You can go ahead and do the 6 damage the turn before or something to set up lethal that way. Otherwise, I don't think it's that important to be evoing it too often, because if you're going to evo this card, you're not necessarily swinging into things. You're looking to deal a 6 damage, like the 6 storm damage essentially to your opponent. Finally, one of the bigger payoffs for playing a hunter in general is Ligma here for its champion. It has Storm and Bane, 2 strong keywords. Obviously, the stat line is not the best in the world, but the fact that you get to look at the top 4 cards of your deck and summon a hunter follower that costs 4 or less among them, put it the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. So obviously, the high roll is hit Matriarch, Evo Matriarch to go ahead and get 2 more storm damage twice from your grave, getting the Woodland Cleavers, and then swinging in for 8 that turn. The worst part about this card is, or I guess not card in general, but I think for the deck, is because your finishing turns are so like RNG based, you're not always guaranteed how much damage you're going to hit unless you like hit a Matriarch off or Ligma and stuff like that, meaning that suddenly you don't have that huge of a ceiling compared to other decks like Kumon, who can just do like 23 storm damage or 23 damage in 1 D shift turn very easily. Whereas this deck, you have to work hard to chip your opponent down, put them in range to lose the game, and then either high roll Ligma or put them so low in life total that Ligma just by itself is able to close out the game essentially. Card is very cool. I like it. We only play 1 of the Evo because we're only, honestly, any game really, you're only going to be really playing 1 of the Evo at any point. Because I think if you get to the point where the Evo really matters, after the first Evo, you either won the game or you're losing the game on the spot next turn. Because most decks in this format, if they don't beat you before turn 7 very hard, they will destroy you turn 7 and later very easily. What's nice about Hunter deck, and I think one of the reasons a lot of people are very high on this deck, is that unlike a lot of other decks currently in the meta and in Shadowverse in general right now, the floor for this deck, its consistency is very, very high, which makes people have more confidence in this deck because they can just do the same plays over and over and over again because they're seeing a lot of their deck. They're seeing the same cards over and again. The game plan is very straightforward. You're just kind of doing the same thing into every matchup, which is very nice. The worst part about this deck, like I said earlier with Ligma and stuff, is that the fact that the ceiling is so low. So you have to work every turn. You have to squeak out some amount of damage to lower your opponent's life total just a little bit more to get to the point that Ligma can finish the game out with either a high roll or just by herself. Otherwise, you're kind of always put in this weird scenario where your opponent like heals up to like 8 or 10 or 8 or 9 life basically. If they go to 10, you're Gucci, because then suddenly Zuda is gonna destroy their life total. But they get up to like 9 life total and stuff, making it very, very hard and awkward for you to finish games out unless it goes longer, or have that consistency to close the game out, unless we're getting to like turns like 9 and 10 for the deck, which does happen occasionally. And luckily you always have the hand size and the board presence to get there. It's just that you don't have that crazy reach. Like things like Forte and stuff like that are just better at closing games out because of the consistency of only needing 1 card, and also the fact that they're hard cards to interact with a lot of the time. Are just so much better at closing out the game. Like if this deck had a really, really good finisher, I think this deck could be tier 1, but unfortunately you're like locked into this weird scenario of your finisher is not the best in the world, but it's not the worst in the world. One of the big things I talked to Pressure about, who's been on this deck a lot and testing it out a lot with me, is that your high rolls never feel great, but your low rolls never feel bad. That's what's great about this deck. But you're never gonna, like, if you need a high roll sometime at any point, this isn't the deck that's going to get you back in the game. If you stumble a little bit too much in like a couple turns, you can kind of lose control of the match very easily, and you kind of don't really have a way back into the game unless your opponent literally lets you like Ligma Evo twice, or you know what I mean. Like you gotta play multiple Ligmas at that point, which I think is like in this meta is asking for a lot, unless you're playing into like the mirror match or something, or like a Kuan player that's not used to playing Runecraft in general and doesn't know how to set up kill turns with D-shift and everything. But yeah, with that being said, this is the 100 list I've been messing around with. It's a lot of fun. It's very consistent. It's actually, the deck is fairly cheap too, I believe. I would be surprised if this deck even hits $100, because I think all the legendaries in this are very cheap. All the singles in this are very cheap. So if you're getting into the game also, this is probably a really, really good deck to start Shadowverse with, because of how high the ceiling, or sorry, how high the floor is on this deck, and the consistency of the deck will let you get very comfortable very, very fast with the list, and then you can kind of branch out there without having to spend a ton of money. But like I said, I would be surprised if this, honestly, if this deck costs more than $60 or something like that, or maybe it does cost like, but if there's no way this hits $100 if you single this out. There's no way. I refuse to believe that happens. But yeah, this is the deck list. I hope you guys like it. Let me know in the comments below, what are you doing with Hunter? I know so many people on the Discord and in comments earlier talking about how Hunter should be tier 1. It is so good, it's so consistent and everything like that. Let me know what your secret sauce is here, and you know, maybe you can convince me it's a tier 1 deck, because right now I don't believe it, but you know, it does seem like it might have the tools to get there. There might have to be a perfect 40 card list that I'm not aware of. Maybe some people have some crazy tech I haven't seen yet to close out games. Hopefully someone shares that with us so we can all have a lot of fun with Hunters and just prove to everyone else Hunters is actually tier 1, or at least convince me that it's tier 1. But with that being said, guys, I hope you liked this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. All that motivates me to keep going. Other than that, I hope to see you guys in the next video. Later, everyone.